Hello, welcome to the Exploring the Restoration channel again. This particular recording will be done podcast style instead of a video style because I'm in the car and I'm up here by Malad, Idaho. Took my son up here so that he could visit his buddy up in Rigby. And I think this is the area that Jonathan Hayes lives in, if I'm not mistaken, over there, that he does the Haystack channel. So my buddy over at the Last Dispensation channel, Troy Abels, he's a busy guy. He's supposed to be coming out soon with our podcast that he did on, to interview me on my global flood versus local flood theory. So I guess we'll see how that goes when he's able to get around to that. So, as far as the lost tribes go, let's start out. They were taken captive when they were wicked into the land of the Medes and also the land of Assyria. Okay, so that area is northern Iraq, eastern Turkey, and kind of, I think it's, I think parts of eastern Iran, kind of southern, all of that area there. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Armenia, in that area. So they were all kind of spread out throughout those areas. Okay, so that was kind of the core area of where the lost tribes were taken. So as we read in the Book of Mormon, the Savior said that he was going to visit all the tribes in addition to the Nephites. And when Nephi was writing, he mentioned how, many of the tribes had been led away, and, they're not, a lot of them are not known as far as, they're not known to the knowledge of the people in Jerusalem. For a lot of years I kind of did a lot of research on this, trying to figure this out. Okay, then there's those traditions in the church, okay, and this is where it gets muddied, all right? There's a tradition in the church that says, following this apocryphal book called Second Esdras, the tradition in the Second Esdras book, anyway, it says basically that they had kind of decided that they were going to keep the statutes and commandments of the Lord, and that they were going to leave and go to an even further country. Okay, and that this country was called Arsareth. Okay, Arsareth in Hebrew means another land. So, according to that, they just call it another land. Okay. there's a lot of problems with that particular book. Okay, and I think it was Joseph Fielding McConkie and, I forget the other guy's name. They wrote a book where, they mentioned that, they go through a sampling of a lot of the doctrines taught in 2nd Esdras, and they say, this is just not a good source, okay? If we're talking about, like, in the Doctrine and Covenants where it says that there are many interpolations by the hands of men and bad translations and so forth in the Apocrypha, okay, 2nd Esdras is pretty much one of these books that qualifies as, full of these interpolations. It's likely that it's probably pseudepigraphic, which means, false authorship. Or in other words, in the first place, the book itself is not even written by who it's claimed to be written by. All right? It's probably not written by Ezra, because Ezra is, or the name Esdras is the what do you call it? The Greek version of the word or the name Ezra. All right? So they're like, this is not a good source. Okay? So, and then they said, basically, if we're going to, say that the Arsareth 10 tribes tradition is this, wonderful, true tradition in this book, while the rest of them are not, it really needs some corroboration. Okay? And so if we're going to try to figure out where the 10 tribes are, we should probably set aside the 2nd Esdras Arsareth tradition and not make it the basis of our whole framework. Okay, so it's just not a good source. So for the purposes of this, we're just going to set aside the 2nd Esdras tradition. So as I was studying this years ago, I, started thinking, okay, well, what is it? What's going on? Because we would read things, by general authorities, where they would base a lot of their assumptions on the Arsareth tradition. About a land of the north. You read in the scriptures that it talks about a land of the north where supposedly a lot of the 10 tribes ended up. And then there's scriptures that seem to indicate that the 10 tribes would end up dispersed. So the brethren like Bruce R. McConkie in the late 20th century and also into the 21st, they were favoring the idea of a dispersion. The brethren in the 20th century, the earlier part of the 20th century, and in the 19th century, they kind of favored the idea that a lot of the 10 tribes were, taken into captivity and then went into this magical land of Arsareth and the land of the north. And reportedly, even Joseph Smith went so far as to speculate that they were on another planet, or that they were taken taken up. So that wasn't a particularly strong doctrine, although the documentation for its provenance from Joseph Smith is pretty solid. The reason I say that is because there's so many second-hand accounts that report that Joseph Smith was speculating on this, about them being taken to another planet. So this isn't just one person that makes this claim. The fact that they're all second-hand and none of them are from, conference talks or anything, that pretty much goes to show how strong that doctrine was, or that speculation. So the prophet Joseph would share his thoughts on that with people privately, and then they would record that. That's what that amounts to. Okay, so it's obviously not a very strong doctrine, or he would have preached it from the pulpit, as being the truth. But it's just not the truth, and it was speculation. And I'll tell you why. So, setting aside the Arsareth tradition and just going by, the scriptures, first of all, we build a case, and the case can be built from the scriptures that they were dispersed, following the scriptures favored by Bruce R. McConkie. And then following the other scriptures favored by other brethren in the past, there's good support also for the idea that there's a body of them that remained intact, okay, and that body is in some area called the Land of the North. There's no good reason to assume that the Land of the North is the same place referred to in the book of Esdras. Okay, so if we're going to identify the Land of the North, it's going to be something like Book of Mormon geography, where we're trying to take the best sources and try to sort of decide what the most likely candidate for the Land of the North is. So if we ignore 2nd Esdras and we go, with the other historical accounts, we find that there are certain not brethren, but what would you call them? Certain church fathers of the early Catholic Church, and certain Jewish sources as well, that kind of all corroborate each other, and those, I would say, are the best sources, because yes, it's true that the Nephi and the Savior said that nobody really knows where a lot of these are. Well, it's true that they wouldn't know where a lot of them are, okay, because they had been taken, or they had been dispersed. That's absolutely true, especially for the ones that have been dispersed. But if we talk about the ones that they knew where they were, we're talking about the ones reported by Josephus and a lot of these other sources that were Jewish sources, where they knew where a lot of these people from these tribes were still. Okay, and I think it was Jerome. Jerome was the early church father that was the one that had made most of the statements that corroborate with the Jewish statements, like from Josephus and these other sources. The statements in Josephus and in Jerome's writings, what those show is that they say, yes, the 10 tribes were taken captive by the Assyrians, taken into Assyria and the land of the Medes, but that's not where the story ends for these reports. Jerome states that not only are they in Assyria and the land of the Medes, but they're also in, let's see, how do you pronounce that thing? It's that one strait over by, what is the name of that city? Istanbul, I think is the name of it, right? They're in Turkey, and it used to be called Constantinople. And so there's that strait that goes between, the Black Sea and whatever it is over there, right? Between the Black Sea and that area there, right? I think it's called the Bosporus or something like that. So, I mean, I don't go by the way I'm pronouncing this, all right? So Jerome mentions that, and he says that some of those 10 tribes were taken there, or that they spread out, throughout Turkey. So then in Josephus and these other sources, Josephus was a Jewish, what was he exactly, a military guy, and then he kind of joined up with the Romans, and then he did a lot of historical work, produced lots of historical works. So there's a lot in Josephus, and some of the key things in Josephus that document exactly where a lot of these tribes were found at the time, right? At least the ones that they knew of. So what they say is that their captivity under the kings of the Medes and the Persians never loosened. Okay, what does that say to you? Okay, Josephus lived at the time of the Romans, and he says that the captivity of the tribes never loosened. And he says that they were an immense multitude. They're, beyond the Euphrates. So when he says beyond the Euphrates, he's referring to the same exact area where they were taken captive in the first place. They were taken to Assyria and the land of the Medes, these areas that I'm talking about, where they were taken captive. If their captivity never loosened, they were kept in that area. Okay, and then the ones that spread out from there clearly went northward. There's some things that have come out. Troy over at Last Dispensation channel, he had Brother Stoddard on there, and who talked about, the Russian legend of Christ coming to the Slavs in that area. And so, what is it that we're finding here? Okay, we're finding that there was this core of the 10 tribes that were kept captive all the way up until the time that at least up till the time that Josephus was writing about it, at the times of the Romans. Then, the statements of, I think it was King Agrippa, quoted by Josephus. He said, was it to Paul or somebody like that? He said, "What do you look to your fellow tribes for support? Or that they're going to free you from the Romans?" And he said, that the Parthians would never let them. The Parthians were there in the Parthian Empire, basically in that same area. The same area that I'm talking about. The area of Assyria and the land of the Medes. And he said, "What are you gonna, try to call your fellow tribes out of Adabene?" I think was the name of the city there in Parthia. Okay, that was basically in the Babylonian area. Okay, and so Mesopotamia. So, at least up until the time of the Romans, there was this group of the 10 tribes in the same area where they were taken captive in the first place. And their captivity was never loosened. Now, guess who came out of that area? Well, let me tell you something about the Medes in the land of Media. The Medes had a caste of priests, and guess what their name was? The name of that caste of priests was the Magi. Okay, and this is the title of any holy person, all right? Any prophet, any holy man, any astrologer, anybody that was of some kind of priestly authority, regardless of the religion practiced by the person. They were called Magi. They were a whole caste of priests, and it didn't matter what their religion was. They were Magi regardless of religion. So let's review some facts. We know that the 3 wise men that came to see Jesus came from the east. Okay, they were from the area of the Parthian Empire. They were, Medes, the Medes and the Persians, okay, and the Parthians. And when they went to King Herod, after they had seen King Herod the first time, they were warned not to go back by the Spirit, and so they didn't. And they knew about the Savior, and they knew that there would be a star. Who were they? Well, if you ask me, they're not just Zoroastrian priests. They're prophets from the 10 tribes, from this very group that I'm talking about that was mentioned in Josephus. That's who I believe the 3 kings, or, there's some doubt about whether there was only 3 of them, the Magi or kings or whatever they were, okay? The fact that they were called Magi points to the fact that they were from this priestly caste And since there was no guarantee of what religion they were, I think there's no reason to assume that they were anything other than of the religion of the Jews. Okay, so what is the picture? Okay, when Sister... let's try to bring this all together. When Sister Nilsson went to Russia, she was kind of like, she had an idea pop into her head, whether it was a spirit or not. Maybe it was the spirit. But she said, what tribe is everybody from? Right? So it turned out that they had almost all the tribes represented there in Russia. Okay, how far is Russia from Assyria and the land of the Medes? Not very far. It's northward. From the reports that we're getting out of Mongolia, almost all the people that are converts to the church in Mongolia that get patriarchal blessings, almost all of them are from other tribes. That is, tribes other than Manasseh and Ephraim. What does this mean? It means Bruce R. McConkie was absolutely right. They were dispersed. What about the so-called main body of the tribes? If we do away with the Arsareth second Esdras tradition, as I was talking about, then we simply come to acknowledge that there was a body of the tribes intact in the very place where they were taken captive. They were there up until the time of the Parthians and the Romans. And most likely the Magi who came to visit Jesus Christ when he was a baby or a young child, whatever the case may be, that they were Jewish leaders or Jewish prophets from the very area that they were taken captive in the first place. That means that a good portion of them were kept intact, but that many of them left along the Silk Road and ended up in China and Mongolia and wherever else in the east, and a bunch of them went north and ended up in Russia, and we'll just find the rest of them when we baptize them. But if you ask me, what is the land of the north? Is it this mysterious land of Arsareth? No. It's the land of Gog and Magog. It's mentioned in Ezekiel, where he says, although I have doubts about the literalness of the Gog and Magog war in Ezekiel with respect to Armageddon, I don't think I believe in a literal Armageddon. Whenever Joseph Smith talked about Gog and Magog, he was talking about the battle after the millennium. Needless to say, the land of the north there mentioned in Ezekiel is the area of Turkey. Okay? So the land of the north is all of that where the 10 tribes were taken captive. At its southern extremity, there in Assyria and the land of the Medes. And its northern extremity would be Russia. That's the land of the north. There's no magical land where the 10 tribes were taken captive. There's no magical body of the 10 tribes left over. They did not, that body did not remain as, well, let's see, how can I say this? It was intact in a sense at the time of the Romans and the Parthians, because those people still had a knowledge of their identity. Does that make sense? It's not likely that they moved from that area. Okay, probably for the last 2,000 years they've still been there. But was the Great Apostasy universal? Yes, it was universal, and those 10 tribes in those areas were a part of the Great Apostasy. They lost their identity over the 2,000 years of time. I'm talking about this main body that was kept intact, where the 10 tribes were taken captive in the first place. So that area of, again, northern Iraq, western Turkey, eastern Iran, these areas, okay? This is where they were taken captive, and this is where they stayed. And during the Great Apostasy, they lost their identity and they were absorbed into the population of the area. This is why one of the main populations of the area are the Kurds. The Kurds have ancestry from the Medes and the Persians and the Assyrians and so forth and so on, and many of them will also have 10 tribes ancestry that mixed in with these other groups. If we are looking for the most pure-blooded Lamanite and Nephite populations, for example, in America, by now most of the Nephites and Lamanites have mixed in with all the other Native Americans. I get that. But I'm saying to you, as people kind of fan out from the center place from where they were first at, their bloodlines kind of get more and more diluted. Okay, if we're talking about the most pure-blooded Lamanites and Nephites left, they would be wherever the Lamanites and Nephites landed, in the area of the land of Nephi and land of Zarahemla. That is where the most pure-blooded Nephites and Lamanites are to this day. Yes, it's true the Nephites were destroyed, but primarily by the time the Nephites were destroyed, there were a lot of, Nephite dissenters and everybody over time that dissented over to the Lamanites. The Lamanites mixed in with the Native Americans that were already present, that had come over the land bridge, okay? So the pure-blooded Lamanites and Nephites are most likely in that area where their area of their first inheritance and Nephi, the land of Nephi and the land of Zarahemla were, okay? Where are we most likely to find the pure-blooded remnants of the 10 tribes? Are we going to find those that, now this doesn't mean anything for their identity in a certain sense, because I am Scottish and I'm also English, okay? And the fact that I got a bunch of English in me doesn't take away the fact that I'm still Scottish, all right? So the fact that certain Native Americans may only have Nephite and Lamanite ancestry on certain family lines doesn't take away the fact that they are descendants of Lehi. Do you follow me? But I'm a big mixture of all kinds of things myself. I'm Dutch, I'm English, I'm Scottish, I'm Welsh, okay? You will never find more pure-blooded Scottish people than in Scotland, all right? You will never find more pure-blooded Germans than in Germany. Okay, their bloodlines are just not generally diluted. They're mostly pure-blooded when they're in the area where they were concentrated. Does that make any sense? So I ask you, where is it most likely that we would find the most pure-blooded 10 tribes lineage people? Well, it would be in the place where they were taken captive by the Assyrians and where their captivity was continuous by the kings of the Medes and the Persians up until the time of the Parthians. Okay? That's why I'm telling you that I believe that the pure-blooded, if you can call them that, the most pure-blooded 10 tribes lineages are going to be found in Western Turkey, Northern Iraq, Eastern Iran, these places like this, okay? Yes, definitely the people in Russia that have patriarchal blessings, that say they're from the 10 tribes lineages, you bet they're from the 10 tribes lineages. But I would hazard a guess that when they mixed in with the Slavic peoples, they became mixed lineage people, just like the rest of us that are Ephraim or whatever. We're most likely mixed lineage, and we probably have a few lineages here and there that are Israelite, that have a little bit of Israelite blood, have a little bit of Ephraim. Okay, my fifth great-grandfather, he was sent out to the west side of the Salt Lake Valley to settle. His patriarchal blessing said that he was from the tribe of Judah. And his last name was Coon, Coon. And as you go back in the pedigree, you find that the name was originally spelled Gohn. Okay, and that is a variant of the Jewish last name Cohen, which means priest. Okay, and a cousin of mine, he donated his DNA. I mean, obviously, since I'm not of the paternal line of that family, and he is, that means that he has the Y chromosome. Okay, the Y chromosome was preserved through the paternal line. It always is. Okay, when we did the DNA test on that chromosome, we found that it was definitely from Cohen lines, okay? Last names associated with the Hebrew word or name Cohen. And it is a German Jewish Y chromosome. Okay. So yes, my patriarchal blessing says that I'm Ephraim, but you can see that I have some Jewish in me, some elements of German Jewish. Okay. My wife's family came out of Russia. They're not Russian. They were Germans that lived in Russia in the area of Saratov. And when the Bolsheviks took over, they didn't want to be conscripted, and so they left Russia and came to America. I would bet some of my wife's family has some German Jewish in it, so I have no doubt about that. That's what I feel. I don't have any evidence for it. But so you can see that this point of view is much different from the regular point of view of some mysterious land of the north being hidden somewhere, a bunch of people hidden somewhere under the ice or in the hollow earth or on another planet. This land of the north is simply the lands north and eastward of Jerusalem and northward of those areas when the people fanned out from there. So, and then this main body, if you want to call them that, that's what they've been called in some of these theories, is the main body. I don't know if that's descriptive or very descriptive, because the main body is the whole body, so to speak, of the 10 tribes. But if you ask me, this land of the north is very explicitly mentioned in the scriptures, that a lot of the 10 tribes would return from the land of the north. When we get a lot of missionaries into the area of Kurdistan and these other areas, that were part of Parthia, and historically part of the Median empires, and the Persian empires, and all of this. When we get missionaries in there, we're going to find a heck of a lot more of these people that have these traditions, just like the ones from Russia and so forth, of 10 tribes ancestry. We're going to find more of them that have traditions that Christ came to visit them. That is the picture. Yes, they're all dispersed. Yes, they're all apostate in the sense of, needing, at least the ones that haven't been converted, they are all needing to be baptized because they did not retain their identity, and any of the scriptures from the 10 tribes are going to be hidden away in hills or wherever else, or monasteries or wherever these records are kept, or old libraries, in some dark place, in some basement of some library. Okay, we're going to find these records. We're going to be led, our leaders are going to be led by the Spirit of the Lord to go to certain places in Turkey, in Iran, in Iraq, so a lot of these Kurds and related peoples of the area will end up being of the 10 tribes lineages, okay? And we will, like, for example, maybe we'll get the records of the Magi that came to visit Jesus Christ. Maybe we'll get first-hand accounts of the prophets of the 10 tribes that came to visit the Savior. those are the records that we will see of the 10 tribes, and they're hidden up. They are not in the hands of mysterious prophets in our day that keep themselves hidden or their identity hidden, because there's no one on this earth that is not under the what would you call it? They don't have separate keys of the priesthood or something. There is no one that has retained keys of the priesthood that are separate from Russell M. Nelson. Okay? These people, when they come into the church, they will come into the church the same way anybody else does. But they will know who they are, and our prophets, when the time comes, will get the revelations to go in and get those records. There's always the possibility that it could be done, like that parchment of John that was done for Doctrine and Covenants, section 7, where it was given entirely by revelation, and the parchment was never had in the hands of Joseph Smith. Okay? So that's what I'm talking about. That's the difference between my theory of the 10 tribes and others that I've encountered, because mine is this sort of, what would you call it? It's based off of these ancient sources, okay, where these ancient sources are telling this story that I've just told. And it's ignoring the Arsareth tradition, which I believe is, the same as Joseph Fielding McConkie and his co-author, I forget the name right now, who made that statement saying, Second Esdras is not a good source. So in summary, a dispersion is part of the picture. Another kind of intact body, I won't call it the main body. Maybe the main body, maybe I should edit my paper, excuse me, that I wrote on this and not call it the main body. Maybe I should call it the intact body at the original location of their captivity, or the original area of their captivity, something like that. But you can see that this is a dramatic difference, because then when these people come into the church, which they're already doing in great numbers in Mongolia and Russia, when they come into the church from these core areas, though, where the 10 tribes were taken captive, then we'll start seeing, or, this is just my prediction without any kind of authority. When we see this, we will start seeing, a lot of the fulfillment of Scripture, where we start to get their records. Because, their old monks and so forth will take people into the old records, the old repositories, in the old monasteries, and they'll say, here's some sacred records. Or somebody will get a revelation to go to such and such hill or such and such location and dig, and they'll find a records repository like Cumorah. Something like that. That is what I predict. So this is my podcast on the 10 tribes. Thank you for listening to the Exploring the Restoration channel.